Well, let's just go over our new page then. It has been a long time since we have passed out a page. A long time. This is 15 and 16, and that's because this goes way back to forgiveness. That's how old this is. But we stayed on love for so long, and we've been on truthfulness for so long. And I'm running out of ways to divide things because I'm running out of the proper method of an outline, so I have to start generalizing things. I had to invent some of my own ways to do it here. Top of page 15, we finish up with forgiveness. Then love, an introduction, the 4 areas of study. We did 2 tapes on love is. Attempted definitions of love. We gave you what our definition was. Then number 2, a statistical study of the Greek terms. We looked at 5 words there, storge, eros, epithemia, phileo, and agapao, where those are found. And then letter F at the bottom of page 15, a summary of the statistics of the Greek terms for love. This message did not record, so no cassettes are available. That's the message that we made a mistake on recording, and we don't have that available. So that has to be extracted from one's notes. Only the phileo, this is just a summary of what we said. Only the phileo and agapao words are in the New Testament. The importance of the concept versus the definition of Greek love words. Top of page 16, the agapao words supplant the phileo ones in New Testament times in importance and frequency. Christianity's contribution toward the agape term, which is the noun from that group. Agapao is active, self-sacrificial, and giving, which are 3 characteristics. You could make it into a definition, or really 3 characteristics of the love of which the New Testament speaks. It's active, self-sacrificial, and giving. Then a thematic study of selected New Testament passages. We looked at the theme of neighbor love, then the new commandment, and then love and the law. Those seem to be the 3 big topics where many of the love passages congregate in the New Testament. Neighbor love, new commandment, and love and the law. And then we ended with the greatest of these is love. And then what we're on, of course, is D, the Christian's thorough integrity, sincerity and honesty. We're not trying to be really precise in studying a lot under sincerity and studying a lot under honesty. Sincerity is of purpose and honesty is of action or of deed. But we're putting all of the material under honesty, although it fits under really both of them. An introduction to the universal conflict over truth and error, the definition of a lie, research into the biblical boundaries of clarification of truthfulness based on my paper, The Anatomy of a Lie, that we've looked at. For us, it's big Roman numeral 1, but here it's A, concerning the extent of what you say. A person is not always obligated to tell all of the truth, but this is not the same as telling the half-truth. We look at the so-called lies of exigency, Abraham, Isaac, the midwives, David, Saul, which was a question mark. We think that that doesn't really fit there in Jeremiah. And then, but this is not the same as an evasive answer. That a person is not necessarily obligated to tell any of the truth. We looked at the 2 problems of mental reservation and situation ethics. So that's concerning the extent of what you say. There'll be 4 divisions here. Now we're on the second one this morning concerning actions which are taken. There'll be 2 points here, misrepresentation and pretension. And we're still on misrepresentation. Detailed study of alleged biblical examples, those that are right and wrong. Gehazi, Joseph's brothers, David, Peter, Paul, Elisha. That was last week. We finished Elisha. And then our topic this morning is and concerning the truthful use of strategy. So that's exactly what we're on. The last thing here on your outline is the truthful use of strategy. So we can't go over all we said about Elisha, but it will tie back into that. It appears that Elisha is using some type of strategy, an inspired type of strategy, and I think that brings up the whole question of strategy. We know we're supposed to be truthful, but what do we mean by, again, truthfulness? We know we should not lie, must not lie, cannot lie, but what do we mean by a lie? It does appear that God allows the sanctioned from heaven truthful use of strategy. And so, of course, I will ask for your help again this morning as we discuss some matters here. Maybe it'll even be more difficult this morning to try to answer this question of strategy. What type of strategy can we use? Now, it's going to particularly be strategy in the context of persecution or of one's enemies. We find this with Elisha. He had need of doing something or getting out of there or saving his neck or something, although we recognize the heavenly band is around and so forth. He still uses some strategy there. Now, I clipped this out a few years ago, a Dear Abby column. Dear Abby, you have had several letters in your column lately about how to handle unannounced visitors who show up at inconvenient times. Years ago, I read a delightful book, Hat on the Hall Table. The lady of the house always keeps a hat on the hall table near the front door. When the doorbell rang, she'd put the hat on her head before she opened the door. If the visitor was someone she wanted to see, she'd say, "Oh, I'm glad you called me. I just got home. Come on in." If it was someone she didn't want to see, she'd say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I was just leaving. I have an appointment that I can't miss." Since we don't wear hats much these days, a purse and car keys on the hall table would work just as well. There's strategy. I don't know that that's such a truthful use of strategy there, though. It does solve the problem of unwanted guests arriving at inconvenient times there. It's a very brilliant strategy, I think, because that way you can solve both dilemmas, whether it's someone coming to see you want to see or someone that you don't want to see. And I think we see many different cases of strategy like that. Strategy where that pretty much ends up as a lie, though. "Oh, I'm glad you called me. I just got home. Come in." Well, maybe she didn't just get home. So there's a lie. There's strategy involved, but she's lying through the whole thing. Or, "Oh, you called me at a wrong time. I'm just leaving." And you're not just leaving. The person called you at a wrong time, and that's why you're saying that. But what about the question of proper strategy? In other words, ignorance is not necessarily to be equated with truthfulness. Well, I just can't do anything but just tell the truth here. Well, maybe that's ignorance being expressed in your desire to be truthful. Maybe there are other things that we could do or other ways in which we could act to cover something up. So let's go to some examples. Let me read a little bit. Page 23. In conclusion to active lies of misrepresentation, and in light of what we have seen in Elisha's case in 2 Kings 6, let us address the subject of the truthful use of strategy. We must not confuse total honesty with a lack of wisdom and common sense. It is quite clear that Elisha employed inspired strategy against the Arameans, and God does allow this. Ignorance, for example, is not untruthfulness. You can only lie about something that you know. Okay, then I don't want to get into that. We'll look at that in a moment. Turn over to Joshua chapter 2. Now, I may have mentioned some things about this earlier, but don't base any of your conclusions or thoughts on something I've said, because I could have said things in a way that was meant to trick you. So you just, in other words, you just think on your own here as we look at this passage in Joshua 2. Now, this is building on all that we've studied thus far in truthfulness, but you're seeing that truthfulness is a big philosophical area here. It's just, you would like to just say, just don't ever do anything untruthful. And you would rather not have to define the concept of truthfulness. Just don't do anything that's untruthful. Just don't tell a lie without telling us, well, what is a lie? Just always tell the truth. Well, we've already seen from Scripture that's not scriptural. Always have to tell the truth. Now, you may never lie, but you don't always have to tell the truth. You can just say nothing. That's not lying. It's just saying nothing. And so there are a lot of ins and outs on this. And this is a big issue. This is a big area that we're coming to this morning. Seems like we have some answers in Scripture, but I must confess myself, it's difficult to work your way through this. We're in Joshua chapter 2 and verse 1. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered into your house, because they have come to spy out our land. But she's taken these men and hidden them. All right, now she's taken them and she's hidden them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them. And everyone talks about Rahab and her lie. No one ever really reads the passage here and really looks at it. What do you think we have going on, let's say, from verse 4 down through verse 5? Do you think that is right or wrong? The men came to me. I didn't know where they'd come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the gate, the men left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch them. She's lying. She's lying there. Now, that does not appear to be approved by God in Scripture, this behavior right here. She, to me anyway, clearly seems to be lying. I don't know where they came from. I don't know where they're going. I just know that they left, and I don't know where they are right now. She, in fact, does know where they are right now. That seems to be a lie. All right, let's read along. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stacks of flax that she had laid on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of Jordan, and as soon as the pursuers had gone, the gate was shut. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up to the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given this land to you, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We've heard of how the Lord has dried up the water of the Red Sea for you whenever you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and to Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God, He is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. Our lives for your lives, the men assured her. If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So she let them down by a rope through the window, for the house she lived in was part of the city wall. Now she had said to them, go to the hill, so the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves there 3 days until they return, and then go on your way. The men said to her, this oath you made us swear will not be binding on us unless, when we enter the land, you have tied this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down, and unless you have brought your father and mother, your brothers, and all your family into your house. If anyone goes outside your house into the street, his blood will be on his own head. We will not be responsible. As for anyone who is in the house with you, his blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on him. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath you made us swear. Agreed, she replied. Kind of sounds a little colloquial to me, but let it be as you say. So she sent them away, and they departed, and she tied the scarlet cord in the window. When they left, they went into the hills and stayed there 3 days, until the pursuers had searched all along the road and returned without finding them. Then the 2 men started back. They went down out of the hills, forded the river, came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told him everything that had happened to them. And they said to Joshua, "The Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands, and all the people are melting in fear because of us." Now, Rahab ends up over in the New Testament, but Rahab is an interesting figure in the Old. We know we're going to see her again over in chapter 7, I believe, of Joshua, because she does survive, and the author of or at least the compiler of the book of Joshua says that she's alive with us down to this day. So we know that Rahab was spared, her household was spared. They were incorporated into the Jewish nation, and they became, for all practical purposes, Jews, that is, proselytes to their faith. But you seem like you have an almost going back and forth morally between the morals of this woman and maybe her lack of morals and the morals of the spies that are there. You see, she's introduced to us back in the first verse as a prostitute. But then, right after we get past that, she's introduced to us as one who is hiding to Jews, to Hebrews. In other words, she's gone from bad to good. And then after she's hiding them, the king asks about it, and she tells a lie about them. Now she's back to bad. And then when we get down from verse 8 through 13, a beautiful little speech of hers. "I know the Lord's given you this land. He's God of heaven and earth. He's the great and the mighty God." Very beautiful, true theological speech of hers. Now she's back to good. And then she gives them a few tips on what she thinks their strategy ought to be as to how to make a safe exit from the city. It seems like there is a back and forth, a seesaw effect as we go throughout this chapter. And then the men, the only thing we have with the men is that it kind of seems to go back and forth with them because they stay in the home of a prostitute. Well, that doesn't look too good for two traveling men, two Jewish men. They stay in her home. But they start off on a good note that they're following the commandment of Joshua, their leader, to go and search out the land. So they've started on a good note, and then they go to this note, and then we've got them hiding, and then we've got them agreeing with her strategy and agreeing with this oath that they will be responsible for her and her family as long as she and they meet the obligations put on them by the two spies. But I think that the first thing and the largest thing that we want to ask, since we've already determined that it appears to be in verse 5, Rahab is lying, is this little parenthetical verse, and that's the 6th verse. The 6th verse in the context of everything else that we have taking place here. She had taken them up to the roof and had hidden them. Now, we already know that she hid them because that word was used earlier, but now we know how and where, the method and what the whole arrangement looked like. And had hidden them under stalks of flax that she had laid on the roof. Now, the roofs of the little mud homes of Palestine were flat. You generally have an outside staircase that would lead you up to it. And you would dry things on top of it. After you cut your crops or your grain, you'd spread it out to dry in the sun. So she has these stalks of flax spread out up there, and she lifts them up and sticks the men underneath them, drops the flax back down, and hides them. Well, is she morally guilty? The two men, are they morally guilty? The two spies then? Okay, just keep thinking about that, and let's jump over to another passage. 2 Samuel 17. These two are similar. 2 Samuel 17, verses 15 through 22. 2 Samuel 17:15. The David's been run out of the city by Absalom. That's the context here. And so Hushai told Zadok and Abiathar the priest, Ahithophel, who was a favorite friend of David's before, but now who's advising and giving counsel against him. Ahithophel has advised Absalom and the elders of Israel to do such and such, but I have advised them to do such and such. Now send a message immediately and tell David, do not spend the night at the fords in the desert. Cross over without fail, or the king and all the people with him will be swallowed up. Jonathan and Ahimaaz were staying at En-Rogel, and a servant girl was to go and inform them, and they were to go and tell King David, for they could not risk being seen entering the city. But a young man saw them and told Absalom. And so the two of them left quickly and went to the house of a man in Beerim. And he had a well in his courtyard, and they climbed down into it. His wife took a covering and spread it out over the opening of the well and scattered grain over it. No one knew anything about it. When Absalom's men came to the woman at the house, they asked, "Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" The woman answered them, "They crossed over the brook." The men searched but found no one, so they returned to Jerusalem. Very similar case here. Two women involved, and they hide important people here, people that God would not want to die, because the enemies of God are after the men that are hidden. Two men involved in each case, two spies and two men involved here. The persecutors come and question the woman who's done the hiding. She appears to tell a lie each time. They've already crossed over. They've gone that way. Appears to be what she's saying here. They've gone that way. While meanwhile, she has these two men hidden. So you can see why we're looking at, although this woman likes to talk about the hat on the table as an important use of strategy, here's probably the most important area where we should discuss strategy, and that is persecution. In both of these cases, your life is at stake here. And so we employ a certain type of strategy, and we're just trying to determine this morning, is it approved of heaven, and is it a truthful use of strategy? Not any lies that are told or anything like that, just a strategy itself. Is that approved of God, for these people, and if it's approved of them in that day, it's approved for us today as well. If they did nothing immoral or amoral, but rather moral in the sight of God, then such would be the case with us today. Now, there are other passages, but let's stop with those two right now. What do we have to say about that? Do you think that's kind of difficult to work your way through that, or do you think the answer is pretty obvious there? The lies seem to be pretty obvious. But remember, whenever we studied Elisha, we also had to look at all the other circumstances surrounding that. And you almost have to do it with all of these things, other circumstances surrounding this. Now, of course, we're not going to water it down and say, well, this is Old Testament, as Dr. Freeman said, so, their ethics, God expects us to have higher ethics today. No, that's certainly not true. What was right for them in this regard, in the moral area, would be right for us today. What was right for them ceremonially might not be right for us today, but we're talking about eternal values or absolutes, which are in the moral, ethical realm, not necessarily in a civil or in a ceremonial realm. Could you do something like that? You see, you got to put it into, last days and persecution and enemies and all of this, and you've got to put it in. If you can't think of that for yourself, you put it behind an iron or behind a bamboo curtain and see, now, what if I was living there? What would I do? What could I do?
I don't think we can lie.
Okay, I would agree with that. So what is lying? I mean, you can lie by action. Wow. Some things I wish I could read you that come later in the paper that might help a little bit, because there are differences between actions and the spoken word, but you certainly can lie by action. And we're talking about misrepresentation. Oh, my. So who thinks these people are wrong in what they've done?
Do we have to think about the sovereignty of God in a situation like this? And
No, let's leave that out. Let's just think about these parenthetical statements, Joshua 2 and 2 Samuel 17. So back to, who thinks they did wrong?
I've been wrong twice.
Well, I think Brother Simon's back there needs to raise his hand then. But he jumped over to the right side last time, though. Yes. Yes. Who thinks that's morally wrong? To hide them in the way that it was done right here. We know that their lie was wrong. Both. Don't we think both are the same, or maybe you see a difference between the two? Okay, they're the same. The type of actions that were performed and hiding them in are very similar. Not the same, but very similar. It does happen to involve grain and everything and being underneath something else. And it is very similar. Is this most everyone? Or some people didn't raise? Who thinks they didn't do anything wrong? Well, no, we're back there on. Well, give me some help on explaining it then. From either side. You like to make mistakes. Why don't you go ahead and make another one for us, brother?
Well, I see a whole lot of factors. Well, maybe one of the major ones is what we were talking about, and the real major one. And the way it is against, I think, Rahab. She may have faith in the Israelites. We've talked about this before, so she has faith that they are going to conquer, but I don't think she would be going about the way she's doing if she really had faith that she would be saved through this without using a little of some intrigue.
Some intrigue. Well, what's wrong with there's just a roof there. You just lay down and put something over the top of them. What's wrong with doing that? That's different than just getting in your bed tonight and just pulling the covers up over you.
Well, you're deceiving because they look.
You're deceiving.
They look for you.
There's motive behind it. Oh, okay, let's say we can fault motives. That doesn't necessarily mean we can fault actions. Let's say we fault motives. Now, if we wanted to help Rahab out here, we would understand what type of cultural environment from which she has just come. Of course, that still doesn't excuse her problems, but that's why she lies and things. I mean, look what type of environment she lives in and she's come out of. Although she's heard about this great God, she hardly has the faith in him that she'll come to have later on and that the Jews would be expected to have at this time. So she's going to do whatever she can, including lying and hiding and whatever, to keep these men alive and to keep herself alive as well. Brother back here, you had your hand up.
Well, I'm against them, so I guess they could plead their case first. Well, what I was going to say is that it seems that since we know what the story's about. We know, like, the spies are I guess you could say, actually the good guys. Okay, so it'd be like hiding the Jew in Germany, Nazi Germany. Okay, you know that if the Jew gets caught, or if the Israelite spies got caught, that they're going to get killed, and you knew that was wrong. So it seemed like what they're doing, the act they were doing, was right. Now the lie part, and it seems like to conceal them somehow would be a right thing to do.
Okay. That's the basic argument of that side anyway, that it's approved of God to conceal.
If we don't have to tell all the truth, saying the reverse of that is we can conceal part of the truth.
Okay.
So in our words, it's the same thing that in actions. You're concealing their presence there, but you're not saying that they're not there. Rahab did say that, and we fault her for lying. Had she had some other response, just in hiding them, she's concealing the truth, but she's not. All she's doing is holding back some of the truth.
So are you allowed to conceal if at the same time you misrepresent? Are concealing and misrepresentation the same thing?
No, I would think that'd be different.
that would be different.
When you conceal, you misrepresent.
Yes.
Not necessarily in this case, though, maybe. Only represent by word instead of by action.
Oh, wait, now, we had a dinner last night, and we concealed that from you, but we didn't misrepresent that, did we?
I'm trying to think if I was deceived or not. No, I wasn't. You didn't misrepresent anything. All right, so you conceal something. But was it not represented as though myself and a couple of other people were going out to dinner together, and at least the representation of it was that was all?
We didn't tell all the truth.
Right.
You didn't tell all the truth. But you held back a part of the truth. And did the part that you hold back, was it intended to deceive me?
But what about moral now?
I mean, we say
Okay.
we can wait. There can be a delay between.
You said that we could. No, now she's asking a question over here. She's asking a question, what about morally?
Yeah, morally. Morally what? Is that morally?
Was that morally wrong?
No.
Our ethical values and so to speak lifestyle.
Yeah, our lifestyle is morally wrong.
In other words, she's trying to make a distinction between what would be classified as a game and what would be classified as real life that really affects someone. And especially, it seems like we've talked about truthfulness and lying as it affects someone adversely. Lying has the intent of destroying or deceiving something or someone.
For the continuation of
Has the intent of destroying or deceiving something or someone. Whereas I guess this is what she's implying, is that a game does not necessarily fit in that same category of being morals or ethics. Do you agree with that? Is that what you mean?
And how can we apply that to Section Commando and Joshua? Was she morally deceiving them in this scenario? I mean, she was looking at the spies as bringing them something that she couldn't do any other way.
Could she not have hidden them in some other way besides a way that appears to be misrepresentation? Such as, well, just send them off a different way.
Trust that God will protect them, without having to really say that they're not here.
Well, she'd have to figure up something in a hurry about that. Either say nothing or...
Right. She didn't. Her cunning was courageous in one way, but it was not. I mean,
It was a life and death situation. They found him, they killed him.
And they probably killed her.
And her too.
Mm-hmm. So she employed a certain type of strategy that was employed last night, but last night was not a life and death type matter. So now we're saying this would just cover anything from life and death to games to simple things. I mean, are we willing to go so far as to say that this type of action in 2 Samuel 17 and Joshua 2 will extend itself to everything from a game to a life and death matter, or to reverse it, from a life and death matter to games? See, remember what we're on here, misrepresentation, and then we want to come to an understanding, well, what is misrepresentation? Remember what Gehazi does? That was one of the first things we looked at back there in 2 Kings 5, that after he had gone after Naaman, whenever Elisha had turned down any rewards for the healing of Naaman's leprosy, in 2 Kings 5, he went after him and said, oh, some friends have come to my master. Well, that was a clear lie there. Some friends have come, and he's changed his mind, and he wants some of those garments that you promised him before. So that's a clear lie. But he takes the garments and gathers all of that up and goes home and stashes it all and combs his hair and cleans himself up and then goes back in and stands before Elisha. And the reading of the text there seems to imply that he comes in standing there misrepresenting what he's been doing as though, oh, I was just around the corner. Now here I am, and I haven't been anywhere. That seems to be a misrepresentation of the fact there. And it's obviously calculated to deceive and to mislead Elisha. And we found Gehazi to be guilty just as a result of that. Not only for his spoken lie that he gave earlier, but so misrepresenting the truth here by intending to deceive. You see what I'm saying now? Is there a difference then between that misrepresentation and this misrepresentation here, or is this misrepresentation? Here you're implying that, well, we could take either one of these, but let's work with the 2 Samuel 17. Here you're implying this is a well, and it has a cover on the top of it now, and I'm sprinkling some grain on top of it. I'm letting it dry here in the sun. And, well, I'm laughing because I'm thinking of what I'm saying. What are we saying whenever we say that? I mean, if we're going to say that she is misrepresenting truth here, tell me how she's misrepresenting truth. Tell me how she's misrepresenting truth.
Something other than what's actually there.
Which is what?
There's a hole underneath that covering.
Well, they surely know that's a well there. But you see, there's a covering on it, and she's got grain on it. I'm sure they know that it's a well there. They know it's a well. There's two men hiding in there. And they didn't find them. They were looking for those two men.
Right. And she said they weren't there.
Well, when she said they'd gone across, yeah, that was the lie. Yeah.
She was pretending they were there.
Can you separate words from actions?
Well, so far we have. We separated her words. We've said she's told a lie, and we're talking about her actions right here. Is she pretending that there's no one in the well? Well, how do you come up with that? That she was pretending as though someone was not in the well.
Well, she implied it by her verbal lie.
We're not going to talk about the lie. We're just talking about the actions here. We already know that the wording is wrong. What about the actions
I
of
don't think the action's wrong. That's fine.
she is not
They didn't ask her if anybody was in the well.
okay.
You wouldn't cover up a well if somebody was in there.
Okay. So now what about this statement then? But you wouldn't cover up a well unless they wanted to be in the dark for a while. But you wouldn't normally cover up a well with two people in there. So when she covers it up, is she implying there's no one in this well?
Not really.
Because she was going to dry grain on
She was dry green at the time.
Didn't they,
Dry it while they were in
didn't they always keep their well covered with the sun out there? Since nobody really knew about the well, they must have used it that much with the brook being close by.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish we were given more information about this particular well here. A lot of their wells were covered up. Some of them weren't, though.
But I would have supposed it would take a long time to dry grain, and longer than a couple guys who want to be in a well.
Well, don't forget about the Rahab case. You can jump back to that, drying flax up there on top of her house. Well, I just wanted you to think about this to see what the boundaries of clarification are about misrepresentation. Now, let's ask ourselves this then. We were talking about William Tyndale and the smuggling of Bibles. Is there any difference between that, what was done there, and what is done right here? Okay, what is smuggling? All right, let's just give us a really good example. You have a chest, and you build a false bottom into it. All right, so you hide Bibles in the false bottom. That's a good case of smuggling. Again, it seems like everything is under something else. There's a case of smuggling. Is there any difference between that episode and these two episodes here? Now, you told me earlier this morning that smuggling was okay. And why did you say it was okay?
You told us
No, not quite like that, no.
You agree with what we said.
Still misrepresenting what's coming in.
Yeah, still, as long as you don't say there's no Bible in that block. You don't ask if there's a false block, you know.
Yeah, but you still made a false spot.
You're making it appear that it's a normal box.
Yeah, you're making it appear as though there are no Bibles in that box. I mean, that's the reason you'd build it like that, is so that people would think there are no Bibles in here. And someone said, I asked you why. Why was that okay? And you said that we should obey God rather than man. So that it was okay to smuggle. We didn't deal with the false bottom right then, but it was okay to smuggle. If you've got laws in the country against importing Bibles in, well, God says to spread His word everywhere. And so you are allowed of God to break those laws, the laws of the land, in prohibiting Bibles from coming in by taking Bibles in. But what about your method or your means of taking the Bibles in then? See, smuggling would just be one thing, bring it into the country against the law. It appears to be allowed of God, that we have to obey God rather than man. But the method or the means of bringing it in, what about if the method or means involves concealment like this? And the concealment seems to be the same as misrepresentation. Seems to be an implication of, there are no Bibles in this box, there are no Bibles in this this keg, there are no Bibles in this bag of flour or whatever. Did you have something, brother?
Well, I was just going to say in both accounts, the concealment part, to me didn't seem like a lie because she didn't, say that the part that she was hiding and then wasn't a lie, but the part that she told them that they were in a place that they really weren't. At that point, she did tell a lie because that's something that God wouldn't do. Part of God's nature and telling us something that is opposite to what really is true.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely a lie.
Right.
Definitely a lie. And
Right.
same with the account with Samuel, where she told them that they were in a place where they really weren't. She knew where they were, and she told them that they were over by the brook. She told them
Right.
a lie.
Well, I find it interesting that it seems like a lot of you are saying that it's okay what they did here, but I'm wanting to hear why is this okay? That's what I'm wanting to hear. I got to have some.
Maybe because Jesus used concealment. I mean, that would be one. If the author of the concealment is God, then I can see that. But I can't see that in this case. I'm still on the other side yet. I don't see that God has authorized it. It was her own device, I think.
But if it's not wrong for God to do it, it wouldn't be wrong for her. It'd be wrong for her to lie. But if it's right for someone to conceal, it's right for everyone to conceal. Even if by concealing you misrepresent the facts, you imply there are not two men in that well, when in fact there are. It's intended to deceive these men following them to go some other way or to look some other place besides there.
Well, it would have been more of a lie if, but they didn't ask. They didn't ask her, or the other guys didn't ask where these men were.
So that's what it boils down to. We just keep our fingers crossed that no one ever asks us anything, so we don't have to answer then.
Then it would be a lie if she said no, they're not in the well.
Right.
They
Oh,
would have asked,
we don't dispute that.
but they didn't.
Could her answer possibly have been, yes, I know where they are, but I'm not going to tell you?
Well, then she'd put her own life in.
Yeah, probably so. She would have,
Life in hand.
yeah.
Kill you, right?
Isn't that the chance you have to take, though?
Well, she certainly could have.
And trust in the Lord. Trust in
Although she's got just one little home there, it wouldn't take them very long to search that home and find it, though. She said, I know where they are, but I'm not going to tell. That's implying they're still on the said premises, though.
My question
and it's like, what if she just put them in a closet and shut the door? I mean, they're still hiding them.
Okay, now that's what I wanted someone to ask. Now, that's just in a closet. These other two cases are different, or are they, than just in a closet? Just in a closet, I mean, I don't think any of us have a problem with hiding. Just go stand behind on the other side of the oak tree whenever your persecutors come up. You don't have to just stand out front and say, here I am. You can go on the other side of the tree. But here in these cases, a certain situation is arranged that is contrary to normal. And that's the same as a false bottom to a box. Just being in a closet is not contrary to normal. That's what closets are for people or whatever to go inside them. But people don't go down in wells and crawl up underneath stalks of flax. So
it's not the hiding, it's the method of hiding.
well, that's what I'm asking. What do we think about hiding? Is hiding allowed?
Yeah.
Everyone seems to agree that hiding is allowed.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
I mean, it's just like fleeing. Just putting.
Is it the same as running? Running, they see you, there he goes, and if they can catch
Well, it's
him,
not
you're
so
gone.
obvious, but it's not. But it's you're not distorting anything. You're not doing unusual things.
So we're almost asking three different things here. I'll get to you, brother. I see you're itching to talk here. Fleeing, and there's nothing wrong with that, because Jesus said, whenever they persecute you in one city, flee to the other. He didn't say jump into a well and pretend you're not there. He said flee to the next city. You just take off running. You flee.
Fleeing against the law.
Pardon?
What if you're fleeing against the law?
All right, we're back to our smuggling question then. What if the law says one thing, and what if Jesus said another? What if Jesus said flee? Whenever they persecute you in one city, flee to another. So we're talking about fleeing, then we're talking about just plain hiding. Then we're talking about sneaky hiding. We're talking about this type of hiding. Pardon?
Didn't have closets.
All right, well, we'll contemporize it for ourselves now, though.
Can we say that
Okay, yes.
in a compartment, so like you got an apple barrel, it's on their assumption that there's apples in there. Can we say that since it's a well, they're assuming it's going to be dry or it's going to be water, they're not.
And that there won't be any men in there.
Assumption that is or isn't. That's what I would think. It's on their own assumption that they're there or not there.
Okay, all right, we'll come back to that. Okay, he's saying that any deception involved here is due to the persecutors here. That's their fault for assuming something that, although most of the time might be that way, doesn't have to always be that way. So it's the persecutor's fault for assuming something. Way in the back.
That's basically what I was going to say, that if the flax had not always been there to dry out, they would have realized that maybe something was out of the ordinary, and they would know enough to look under it,
Uh-huh.
as well as the well. If it was something out of the ordinary, any thinking person would go look at that.
Uh-huh.
So it must have been just all of the ordinary that the flax was drying on the roof and then the grain was laid out on the well to dry. That, otherwise, they certainly wouldn't have done that, that was not look under it.
Uh-huh.
So she really wasn't, they really weren't deceiving, and they weren't doing anything more to deceive them at, what is it, in a closet, shutting the door.
Okay.
Nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay, you were asking why would concealment, why are we agreeing with the concealment? I was just thinking if God would honor preservation of life, and they would be, even the mean sometimes he might not approve of, and she was lying, so that wasn't proper, but the fact of preserving their lives just by hiding them, not having them around, I mean, so that.
Well, I don't know how much we're concerned about preservation of life. We're still asking
Rahab was afraid of her life.
how they
She
preserve
wouldn't
the
have been
life.
there So that she wouldn't have been killed or they wouldn't have been killed. And the same with David. David was fleeing so that he wouldn't have been killed by Absalom. So they would have been preserving his life by hiding him.
Okay.
Well, what Chris said there, I don't think that says anything about what they did. Because that's like saying you should, shoot somebody else if they're going to shoot somebody else to save that other person.
No, they were hiding them so that they wouldn't be found.
But that's not justifying the hiding. That's just saying you're trying to preserve life.
Right.
But if we can't do that.
Right, that doesn't mean you can do anything you want to preserve life.
Yeah.
Okay, but beyond that,
So
what-
why did Paul go over the side of the wall? He didn't want to live.
He was fleeing.
He was fleeing.
That he was.
Well, it doesn't say he was concealed though. We were talking
Well,
about-
yeah, he was in a basket when he went over the wall.
Well,
I mean, so that's
Yeah,
what
the
I'm
lower
saying
belt
with
was
the
off.
spies. The spies were concealed. They were so that they would stay alive. I mean, so what'd be wrong with that whole purpose of just wanting to live longer? I mean, why not be concealed because you want to live longer?
Well, can we say that about hidden Bibles though? Because the hidden Bible is hidden. We use that same argument because it's preserving life. You know what I'm saying?
Go ahead, brother. You had something
Okay,
else you wanted to make.
well,
Some other
what I
point.
wanted to say was the point they're using about the strategy they're using in hiding these people. Okay, they're saying that, you know, the flags were already on the roof, so they hid them underneath the flags and nobody would think to look underneath the flags because they were always there. If they weren't always there, then, you know, of course they'd think, well, gee, those were there yesterday, we better go check them out. Well, that just shows you, that doesn't prove pro or con. Matter of fact, that proves the other way, I would think, of deception on that point, because they're always there, that they know that anybody that see them would assume that those are always there.
So they're taking advantage of what's ordinary
Right,
then.
they're taking, and they're misrepresenting the situation, because the same way with the well, that they're misrepresenting that by saying that, you know, this is the ordinary well like it always has been, there's nobody in there because I got my thing over top of it, I'm drying my grain on there. So it seems to point the other way.
Okay.
That
What is that, I mean, that in itself, if we just look at the fact that, what does that demonstrate? I mean, God demonstrates something by having, by showing that there's, he's not using, what I'm saying, he's not using that to demonstrate something about himself. If we were just not given anything beyond the fact that you live in, not told the rest of the story, we know what her motives are, but that action, isolated in itself, I think, would
She's still culpable. Okay.
It almost looks like you're looking for the difference of fleeing and hiding behind the tree, and fleeing and hiding climbing the tree.
Well, I'm asking, is there a difference? Chris has mentioned something. Let's look at this. 2 Corinthians, that's the next text. 2 Corinthians 11, verses 32 and 33. It seems to parallel a statement made by Luke. This is from Paul's point of view, and so he gives us other details that Luke does not, but in Acts chapter 9, of course, parallels where over there we're told from Luke that the Jews were after him, and so Paul escaped. And here Paul, may be more specific, says that the governor of the city was after him, and so he escaped. He said in Damascus, now this happened way back in the first years of his conversion, 2 Corinthians 11:32. In Damascus, the governor, under King Aretas, had the city of the Damascenes guarded in order to arrest me, probably at the gate, because that's the going in and going out place, and they'd catch him there. But I was lowered in a basket from a window in the wall and slipped through his hands. Now they had different types of baskets. Two different types of baskets are used over there in those feeding accounts of the 5,000 and 4,000. One a little small basket that a boy carries, and one a large basket that almost a man could fit in. You might want to know, what type of basket are we talking about? Was it a basket where Paul could actually duck his head and hide? But I don't know that that would really be important to know here, because who's just going to be dropping a big basket over a wall? I mean, whether he could hide his head down in it or he was in full view, he's going down the wall in the basket. He's doing, if you want to call it sneaky or misrepresenting or whatever, that's exactly what he's doing. Whether people can see him in the basket or not, he's going down the wall in the basket. So, do we fault Paul here with what he's done?
I don't think he's not misrepresenting himself, I don't think. It seems like the basket end of it is just the means of him getting down the wall instead of climbing down the rocks or climbing down a rope. It'd be easier for somebody to let him down in the basket.
Okay, so all we have here is just escape.
Yeah.
And he's obviously trying to get away from his persecutors. He's not going to go through the city gate. We don't find any problem with all of that then. He's going to leave them sitting there. He's going to leave them deceived, just standing there at the gate for a couple hours waiting for him to come by. He's going to leave them like that for a while. That's what they're thinking. They're assuming that he's still in the city and that he's going to come out this way. So that's all right for him to leave them assuming something that's wrong. Right? Or is it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, if that is so, then we're back to what Brother Stark has said here. That's based on the assumption of the persecutors. They happen to assume something that was false there. In other words, what I'm saying here is, if that's all right with Paul, do we see any difference in between what Paul did and what happened back in these earlier portions of Scripture? Because you're assuming something is going to happen, and Paul does something entirely different than what they would assume, and something that he would know they wouldn't think of, and something that he would know would leave them stuck at the gate, deluded, deceived, misguided, and the same type of thing happened back there in 2 Samuel 17. Yes?
Yeah, but I think with the well, with the flax on the roof, that's a normal thing. In other words, the flax are always there, and the well has always been there, and it's not something that changes from day to day. In other words, unless you're concealing somebody in there, you never cover the well up and put grain on it to dry.
Yeah.
But the point about Paul leaving the city, he might not never leave the city. So that's kind of like it's a different circumstance.
Okay.
It's not a everyday. Paul is not. Paul is not trying to deceive them to make them think he's not leaving the. No, I guess I don't want to say that.
But they're still assuming that he's going to come out this way.
Okay, but they're assuming.
And that normally that would be true. You normally exit not in a basket over the wall. You normally exit out of the gate.
That's their own fault, though.
That's their own fault. That's what you've said about the other people. That's their own fault for assuming.
Say that he was that gate.
We can't lie to someone. If we lie to them and we give a false assumption, then we gave them that assumption. If we just have arranged things in our yard in such a way and we've hidden someone, then if they want to find them, look for them.
Okay, but the point is back with the well and the flax on the roof. Both of those are coming across that there's nobody there. That they're misrepresenting that point. Where Paul's not misrepresenting that he's not going to leave through the gate of the city. He's not misrepresenting that point.
Some people think that might be a toss-up there. To leave those guys standing there is just You should have sent them a note and said, "I'm sorry, I'm gone."
I don't know, the way I see it, just thinking about it, the strategy used in both accounts is that the question is, where can we hide? Paul's, how can I escape now that these guards are posted there? And they came to the conclusion of the use of strategy that they'll never think of me having escaped through the wall in a basket. So that'll be my escape route. And the same with Rahab and the other woman, that how can we hide you so these people don't find you that you're looking for? They'll think that think of the flax on the roof and the well.
Okay.
Is they'll never think of looking in the flax there, because to them that's just a pile of flax. To the people that's just a well. They'll never think of looking in there. So why don't we put you in there, and it'll never cross the enemy's mind that you're even there.
And you're saying that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what Terry is saying, that you're gaining your footage and you're gaining your stronghold built in the assumptions of someone else's mind.
I think, again, that just shows the strategy behind the plot, but that doesn't prove either way whether it's right or wrong. That just shows why they did what they did, but that doesn't make it right or wrong.
Okay. Right here.
When
Doesn't this make you think about it?
Yeah.
And you almost get thoughts that you can't quite express them. You thought you had it, and then it slips from you really quickly.
You're hiding them in the flags, in the well. You're not saying that they are there, and you're not saying that they aren't there. If had asked, are they there, then obviously you'd have to give an affirmative response or make up some other kind of.
Are you implying that they are there or not there?
No.
You're not doing either one.
No, because-
It's just neutral.
Right, it's not anything, it's just there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of what Terry's saying. It's just there. It's neutral. And if you persecute or want to pick up a false assumption about that,
Right, exactly.
even though maybe ordinarily it's not like this, there's nothing in the Bible that tells me I can't arrange my well this way.
But where's the cutoff line? You could walk around with a mask on, and they could be thinking this is Harry going to the store. And it's really,
Yeah,
it's
but
really
you're trying to
someone
say
else.
that you're hairy if you have a hairy mask on.
Well,
You're
that's
not
what they're trying to.
She doesn't know that she's such a poet.
They're trying to say this is just a plain old roof, basically. I mean,
Trying to say that nothing's out of the
Nothing-
ordinary.
nothing's out of the
You brought 'em
ordinary.
up there.
aren't they?
So it depends on whose mind you're working in. You're saying that she's trying to say that. Maybe she's not trying to say that, but she's wanting to arrange it so that they will think that.
I want to just get back to the point of if you don't have to tell all the truth, then you may have some secret that would be information they want, but if they don't ask, you don't have to give it. And so if you have men or something that they want, but they don't detect them because it's a normal appearance of things, that's what they would normally think of it, then all you're doing is not giving them the information.
Okay, I think what people would fault with that is if you don't have to tell all the truth, that means you might have some secret fact in your mind, but that secret fact in your mind no one can know about one way or the other. It's not that you have in a deed gone out and arranged something in such a way to make it look like you don't have a secret fact in your mind.
This message